Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. All of us here in the Magic Kingdom are glad to have you with us on this special day.
And now we ask for your safety and those around you that you walk slowly and carefully to your first destination. Have a great day and welcome to the
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mangello, and this is show number 280 for the week of June 24th, 2012. We're going to turn back the clock this week and visit Walt Disney World on opening day, October 1st, 1971. With a renewed sense of nostalgia in the Disney parks and among Disney enthusiasts, we're going to look back at the extinct attractions we wish were still in Walt Disney World. From some of your favorites to a few you may not remember, we'll discuss some lost attractions, shows, shops, restaurants, and entertainment on this Wayback Machine segment. I'll then have the answer and winner of last week's Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week and pose a new question for your chance to win a Disney prize package. Be sure and stay for the announcements, including information about our next WDW Radio Meet of the Month in Walt Disney World and other special events, as well as your voicemails at the end of the show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show.
Your attention, please. The Walt Disney World Railroad now boarding for a scenic trip around the Magic Kingdom.
Lately, there is a renewed sense of nostalgia at the Disney parks, and it goes back to Walt Disney World's 40th anniversary, to Epcot's 30th anniversary this year, and obviously before that with Epcot's 25th. I'm even thinking about things like the Piece of History pins that Disney used to put out, to even more recently with Return of the Orange Bird and the original Tiki Room, and so much more that harkens back to those original days of Walt Disney World. And so this week, I thought we would take a look back to where and when it all began. And we'll set the Wayback Machine to day one, to October 1st, 1971, and take a look back at some of those extinct original attractions that we wish were still in Walt Disney World. And they can be everything from rides to shows to shops to restaurants to entertainment and everything in between. And joining me this week is fellow adventurer and traveler and Walt Disney World enthusiast and history buff, and he is, of course, Ryan Wilson from the Main Street Gazette.
Hey, it's great to be back.
Look, man, it's great to have you back again, and we talk about this, our wives commiserate about this all the time, about how as we walk through the Disney parks, we sort of geek out together, say, oh, remember when this was here, and do you remember the Diamond Horseshoe, and you used to have to get your ticket here, and sort of, and they say, hey, you know, you have us and kids to take pictures of as well, too. But I think there is, like I said at the beginning, such a renewed sense of nostalgia for people like us that were there very early on. Look, I was in Walt Disney World in November of 71. You know, my parents were big Disney fans, so when the park opened, 3 weeks after, there I was with my bad hair and worse shoes sitting on Main Street, not long after the gates had opened for the first time. And even for newer visitors, Ryan, who maybe didn't experience the Orange Bird or the original Tiki Room or Horizons or remembered what Adventureland or Tomorrowland looked like on opening day, there is such a sense of nostalgia in the parks, on the blogs, from the enthusiasts themselves, even in things like the merchandise. And look, the food, the Citrus Swirl is back.
Yay, citrus swirl. No, you're absolutely right. I think you're totally right in that opening where, going back to Epcot's 25th anniversary, it almost seems like that was the turning point, the linchpin, where all this outpouring of, do you remember when this opened? And do you remember when this was here? And you're right. We've gone by places and looked like, was that structure there on opening day? And being the people who our wives think we are, we have the photos that go, no, you know what, that was there. Oh no, that wasn't there. But it's all these layers from the food to the merchandise, and you're right, it's everything, and it's finally, and I think Disney is finally starting to recognize that and coming back around and honoring these pieces of their past.
Yeah, and we've talked about things like the Walt Disney World that never was. Those things that were supposed to be here and never came there, and we've looked at some attractions from a historical perspective, but I really want to take a top-down view from day one and look back at those things that aren't there, because oftentimes, like when I'm giving tours, especially on places like Main Street, I spend a lot of time and I ask people to use their imagination and think back in their mind's eye and try and paint a picture of how different the park was on opening day. What that view down Avenue of the Planets, which it wasn't called then, but that view into Tomorrowland, how different that looked back then, or standing in the middle of Adventureland and knowing that a lot of that wasn't actually there. So I thought it would be fun for us to talk about some of those things, and obviously we'll go land by land, of those things that were there on opening day that aren't there now, that maybe that sense of nostalgia and that sense of history makes us wish that they were back for one reason or another. Whether it's a one-time thing or we say, hey, boy, I wish they would open up, and I'm showing my hand. Boy, man, a Diamond Horseshoe was a great place.
I knew you were going Diamond Horseshoe. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a few no surprises on my side.
Because I thought about Main Street USA, and I thought about going with my dad, and my dad loved, and again, I'm jumping ahead of the game, but the Diamond Horseshoe used to have to get your ticket on Main Street, and that's what my dad had to do before we hit attractions. And at first I'm like, oh, come on, Dad, there's like Haunted Mansion, Pirates. Now I get it, and now I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go back with my dad and get one of those tickets again. But let's start there. Let's start on Main Street USA on October 1st, 1971, because it did look like, obviously, architecturally, attraction-wise, it was the same. The railroad was there and the facades were there, but it did change a little bit in terms of the stores and the entertainment, even some of the food that was there. So what are some of the things for you, because I know I have a couple of favorites, believe it or not, that are not about food, that are things on Main Street that from opening day, it's got to be an opening, can't be 1973, opening day that you wish were still there.
Oh, 1973, so I can't go Walt Disney Story?
You can't go Walt Disney Story, but I'll see your Walt Disney Story and raise you a Hoot Gibson.
Ooh, Hoot Gibson. I'll raise you Swan Boats. No, but getting back to it, I think when I think of my early years on Main Street, and this was after the opening, but it was still there on opening day, I have to go House of Magic.
Yeah, man.
This was a place where, and this was another, like you with your dad, this was me and my dad. He would take me in, and I could buy a cheap magic trick, and I'd walk around that thing for weeks mastering it, and I'd watch the guy and just in such awe of when they were performing tricks and showing everyone the tricks, and the place just had this eerie feel to it, and it was like that, dark side, mysterious thing that I just loved. And this was a place that was Main Street to me.
Well, it was, and it wasn't. And what I mean by that is this, and this is one of the things I try and articulate on the tours, especially with people whose first visit to Walt Disney World wasn't until the 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, is that very early on, as you walk down Main Street USA, today it very much is dominated on the left-hand side, certainly by the Emporium, and on the right-hand side by just a few different stores. But in 1971, those facades, of which there are 28, 30 or so, often housed different stores inside, and many of which, like the House of Magic, didn't feel as though you were in Walt Disney World. And what I mean by that is, like you, the House of Magic is where on the way out, my dad said, okay, this is where you can go and pick something out. And I'll never forget some of the little magic tricks and monster masks I had on the wall. And it was not a Disney branded piece of merchandise. And many of the other shops and stores very much had that same feel to it. So, yes, there were things like the Emporium and there was the hat shop and some of the other Disney branded merchandise shops. but other things like the Greenhouse Flower Shop, where you could go down Center Street, back when West Center Street was there, and purchase potted plants and flowers. Not that I imagine myself walking around with a big potted plant from Mom down, through Walt Disney World, but there was a clock shop and a china shop and the Wonderland of Wax. It was a candle store that wasn't Disney candles. It was just, but they were appropriate to, storytelling-wise, they were appropriate to that turn of the century Victorian era town. These are the kind of stores that you felt would have existed, not just in 1971, but in 1871 as well.
Absolutely, and many of them were sponsored by outside companies, and you even had things like a tobacconist, which you wouldn't see anywhere on Walt Disney World now. But at the time, it fit with 1971. It fit with that turn of the century feel, and all these little places made, basically built their own community inside of Main Street.
Yeah, and the tobacco store is the one that normally gets the most raised eyebrows, because as you walk down Main Street, and as we record this, he's currently under refurbishment, but on the right-hand side on the second block is a cigar store Indian who has a green cape. He has a twin in another land I just gave it away, in Frontierland. Appropriate to the time because, again, thinking about the turn of the century, many times you needed to show people what was being sold inside, not in words, but in a physical representation. And although the cigar store Indian is now on the wrong side of the street, originally, as you walk down Main Street facing the castle, he was on the left-hand side of the street where the Hall of Champions is now. So right before what was at the time the refreshment corner, which is now Casey's, was a tobacconist. And one of my favorite souvenirs, which I'm looking at right now, it's on my shelf, of which I have two, is I have a single cigar box and I have a large flat cigar box that would hold maybe 8 to 12 cigars with a branded, like a hot iron brand of the old Walt Disney World logo on it. And in the front, it actually says WD, and I don't get this part, Fancy Tales. And I don't know why it says Fancy Tales, but that's the kind of souvenir you would bring home from Main Street. Something so different, something so appropriate to that time that, again, like you said, obviously for many reasons, you would never see that again. And we'll talk about another one like that when we get to another land in the Magic Kingdom as well.
Yeah, it really was. It's really interesting. And and to go along with that, they had every resort, and many of the restaurants had their own matchboxes and matchbooks, and but it made Main Street just feel so alive, and especially when you have, considering a lot of the attractions are still the same. Like you had the Main Street vehicles like the fire engine and omnibus, which still run.
Right, and the things, so like you, I miss the House of Magic. I don't miss the tobacconist. I don't wish they would bring it back, obviously, but I do miss the House of Magic. I do miss some of those quaint stores behind the facades because it gave you reason to go in and out and to wander in and out. Certainly, I miss West Center Street. I miss the Harmony Barbershop being there when they sold the mustache cups. But what I really miss, because, again, of when I grew up and the memories that I have, because I think, for speaking for myself personally, the reason why I love Walt Disney World now is not because of Dumbo and the castle, and it's because of the memories I shared with my parents. So going into the Penny Arcade and spending time there, or going into the cinema when it actually showed shows, but going into the Penny Arcade, which was right behind where the House of Magic and the Tobacconist were, in the back of what is now Casey's and the Hall of Champions there, that I remembered not only playing, at the time, modern pinball games, but those old mutoscopes and stereoscopes were fascinating to me, because at that time, that was the level of entertainment that people had in the turn of the century.
Yeah, and even in 71, it was something kind of lost. It was a lost art form, and so and this was a great way to look back. And you still have a few of them hiding out and upstairs in the Main Street station and over at the boardwalk. But it was just a room after room of these old games, some new games, and it was a perfect turn of the century place to play.
So I would bring back, and I think we would get many other votes to bring back the House of Magic. I think it would be a tough call to bring back the GAF Camera Center, which now occupies where the confectionery is. Now, kids at home, I want you to try and wrap your heads around this just for a second. I want to put this all in context for you. Because on October 1st, 1971, and for many years thereafter, believe it or not, you could walk through the Magic Kingdom and take pictures with your little Instamatic and your little cube flash bulb. Bring your pictures, bring your film, if you remember what that is, bring your film to the GF Camera Center, and in true Disney magic, at the end of the day, Ryan, you'd actually be able to see your pictures that same day. You didn't have to send them away, you didn't have to bring them to the photo mat. You could get your pictures developed right there on Main Street. We mock it now. It was awesome back then.
It was amazing. You couldn't. It was, you know, what the joy you get from looking at a digital photo 3 seconds after you take it. We had to wait all day for.
Yeah, and then I remember eventually when they started renting video cameras, and I remember it because they were like the shoulder-sized TV cameras of today, but they had the big battery packs. So my dad carried the camera, and the little guy had to carry the shoulder battery pack trailing behind him. But boy, I'd love to be able to find those old movies which are buried in storage somewhere.
Like I say, I have rolls and rolls and rolls of undeveloped film, and who knows where they've gone.
So yeah, I think we're in agreement. We would bring back the House of Magic. I think we would maybe bring back the Penny Arcade. And I will say too, not just for Main Street, but other areas of the Magic Kingdom, something that is extinct that I would bring back is the entertainment. Because there was a lot more live entertainment, which unfortunately has gone away over the years. So yes, we still have the marching band, and certainly you have the Dapper Dans. But back on Main Street in 71, you had this crazy sort of Keystone Cop Quartet. You had a Town Square Band. You had the Crystal Palace Trio. You had Disney characters. You had, like today, the Ragtime Pianist over at Casey's Corner. There was a fire department band. There was a Pearly band that went from Main Street into Fantasyland, sort of from the Mary Poppins era. And there was a lot more live entertainment throughout the Magic Kingdom. And that is certainly one of the things I would love to bring back, because I think that adds such another wonder. Listen, Tiana Showboat Jubilee could come back tomorrow and I would be psyched. I know it wasn't 1971, but it's just the live music that I enjoy so much.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that also has been lost with that entertainment aspect is everything is so scheduled now. And I know back then Disney had their internal schedule, but it was so much easier to find a character wandering in the park. And this entertainment just seemed to happen spontaneously, whether it was the Firehouse Department Band or the Crystal Palace Trio. All these different things just seemed like they were happening spontaneously, and you just got caught up in it. And I think that's something that I would bring it back in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And so as we move our way clockwise through the Magic Kingdom towards Adventureland, for me, one of my favorite locations, odd as this may sound, in the Magic Kingdom is that transition point as you go from the Magic Kingdom in towards Adventureland, as that ragtime music that plays in the background is subtly overtaken by those jungle beats coming from Adventureland. And one thing that was their opening day that oddly enough I wish was back, and it's a very subtle change that most guests might not realize, is that transition point, is that portal between Main Street and Adventureland. Because originally that bridge was an arced bridge. You had to sort of walk up and over that bridge. And what that did was it helped aid in that transition between Main Street and Adventureland story-wise, because as you looked to your left, and all of a sudden the Crystal Palace is starting to lose that delicate Victorian charm and is sort of getting a little bit overgrown. And as you look forward, you see the spears and the skulls. You hear this tribal sort of drum music, but you can't see into Adventureland. You can't see what is beyond the apex of that bridge. That adds such an element of mystery to it. All you see is this bridge and the green of the tree houses and all the overgrown foliage, which was not very overgrown in 71, but go with me here. It added such, I think, another dimension and a sense of adventure to Adventureland that a small thing like that bridge, which I understand has to go away for ADA reasons and strollers and wheelchairs, I totally get it. But from a storytelling and from a visual point of view, it was important.
You're absolutely right. And I've said for years now, I think in the Magic Kingdom, I know a lot of people like talk about transition point between Liberty Square and Frontier, or Liberty Square and Fantasyland, and the piece of the Columbia Harbor House that goes over the overpass there. But to me, the Crystal Palace is one of those, is the perfect transition piece from Main Street to Adventureland of any corner in the park. You get that old Victorian, you feel that adventure, that sense of adventure with it. It feels like something that would belong in India or Africa. with colonization and all these things. And you're right. When you come over that bridge, you see trees, maybe a rooftop or two, but you really have no idea what you're walking into with Adventureland.
And that's what it was meant to be. Walt Disney with Disneyland, certainly carrying over into Walt Disney World, wanted to give you the sense that you had left the confines of the continental United States and gone somewhere nondescript but incredibly exotic. And look, if we would have done this segment a year ago, we would have said, oh my God, bring back the original Tiki Room, bring back the Orange Bird, and bring back the Citrus Swirl. But our prayers have been answered because they're all back. So,
right, our prayers to the Tiki Gods have been answered, and the Sunshine Room has been, the Sunshine Tree Pavilion has been restored.
But what I tell you, what I would like to see back are two things. One that I remember, one that I honestly do not remember. And the thing that I do remember, it goes back to the live entertainment, was the Adventureland Steel Drum Band. It was eventually JP and the Silver Stars. They played, if you can sort of imagine if you're listening, as you're walking, later on they played sort of by Caribbean Plaza, but originally they played in Adventureland proper because obviously there was no magic carpets of Aladdin there. But what I never saw, because it closed within just a couple of months of park opening, and I may have been there but have no recollection of it, was Colonel Hathey's Safari Club Arcade. And there was a small arcade located by some of the shops and stores near where, past where the Adventureland veranda would have been, but by Tropic Toppers and Oriental Imports, around there, near where the breezeway is to Frontierland, there was a small arcade that had a lot of those old-style shooting games where you'd have this sort of projected image and you'd have this rifle that was on a swivel and you could shoot at animals. And it sort of made you feel as though you were on sort of an exotic safari hunt. But it was actually, it holds a distinction of being the first attraction to ever close in the Magic Kingdom. It's something that I've never seen. Something I've never even seen a picture of. I know it existed for a few months, so I'd like it to come back just so I could say I experienced it.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those pieces that was before my time, and I've seen like mock-ups and very good descriptions, but I've never actually seen a picture of it. It was like an Adventureland version of the Penny Arcade, but very, very much smaller. And the one thing people don't realize is that opening day of Adventureland stopped at the Tropical Serenade at the Sunshine Tree Pavilion. There was no Caribbean Plaza. There was no Pirates of the Caribbean. That was it, and you had to catch a breezeway over to Frontierland right there.
Right. So, and next time you're in the Magic Kingdom, or if you're listening to this in the Magic Kingdom, as you're walking past the Jungle Cruise on the left-hand side, the Enchanted Tiki Room on the right, look down. We always tell people to look up. Look down, and you'll see the demarcation point where Adventureland came to an end. Because obviously we all know the story. There was no Pirates of the Caribbean. Adventureland ended right there. There was no Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't understand this, Ryan, that they thought people in Florida wouldn't care about the Caribbean because we're so close to the Caribbean. Whatever, but
I don't know. I grew up in Florida, and I couldn't get enough of pirates, so yeah. I don't understand it either.
And listen, while we all lament the loss of what Thunder Mesa and Western River Expedition would have been, when guests complained and Card Walker had to say, "All right, look, forget Thunder Mesa, go find me a place to put in a Pirates of the Caribbean." It all worked out well, except for that big loss that we would have had in Frontierland. But yeah, take a look down, and you'll see the outskirts of what was the end of where Caribbean Plaza began.
Absolutely, yeah. And so really we're left with a couple of dining venues and a couple of shops from opening day that are no longer with us. But I'm with you on, I think the one piece I would bring back is the steel band. Yeah.
And again, it's that sense of having, live music everywhere. And sometimes, and for me, it's always sort of the surprise. I'm not a person that looks at the time guide and says, the Banjo Brothers and Bob are coming out in 15 minutes.
Right.
It's one of those surprise things that when they come, it's neat to experience. And I think helps to tell, each of them was appropriate to the location, so they all help tell the story of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it was. I think it is that. And I still feel that way. I like the surprise of something. And when I see a large crowd massing, I'm like, oh, somebody's looked at the time guide. They know there's something happening now. And I miss that spontaneity of it.
Yeah, so as we round the corner or pass through the breezeway into Frontierland, there's not a lot to say to a certain degree that we wish would come back from 1971 because a lot of it is still there. Those original attractions, the shooting gallery, Okay, I take that back. The Explorer canoes. The railroad station obviously wasn't there. We were talking about this earlier. Right. The Country Bear Jamboree, sponsored by Pepsi Cola and Frito-Lay, which that's the worst. I'm sorry, it's the worst Henry impression ever. But I got to bring it back to food. What I do miss is the mile-long bar, which occupies that left-hand most section of where Pecos Bill's Tall Tale Inn and Cafe currently sits.
Right, where you had Biff and Buff and Max who would talk to you while you grabbed a snack and warn you when the next show was letting out, and there was a lot of fun. I tell you one thing that I would like to go back and see, and this is just because it's a personal favorite of mine. The Frontierland Shooting Gallery at that point was still using a little metal pellet gun, and it wasn't using the light sensors. And I would just like to bring that back for one day so I can say I've done it.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I wouldn't put anyone's eye out, I swear.
You're going to shoot your eye out, kid. What I do miss, though, is, believe it or not, it's a shop. And it's still there, but it's what they sold in that shop. Because originally, the Frontier Trading Post, which is located right next to the Shooting Arcade, which is run by Texas John Slaughter, sort of giving you a sense of where you are geographically and time-wise. Originally, when it opened, Ryan, it sold authentic Western gear, authentic Western wear. So you could buy cowboy hats and cowboy boots. It also sold a lot of, obviously, reproduction Native American merchandise. So from Indian headdresses to moccasins to one of my favorite souvenirs, which, again, you'll never find for a variety of reasons, is a Native American peace pipe. It has the feathers. It's got the Walt Disney World brand on it. Certainly never be sold again, but at the time, that's the kind of merchandise that was sold there. So, again, unique to where you were shopping in Walt Disney World on opening day, so was the merchandise specific to those locations.
Right, and we should mention that this was where the other cigar Indian lived, out there on Frontierland. But the other thing we're talking about, go back to entertainment. There was a bluegrass band and a mariachi band in Frontierland.
Right. And, some people say, well, wait, bluegrass doesn't necessarily fit there, but I think it was probably let's say, where can we shoehorn it in and put it in? But again, you wouldn't necessarily know what you were getting when you went in there. Now we have the Banjo Brothers and Bob, who I love. They come out with the banjos and the tubas, and it's great entertainment. It wasn't their opening day, but we've talked in the past about that cowboy gunfight that used to take place over by where originally the train station was, but then moved over to where the Country Bear Jamboree was, and on the rooftops over there for a number of years. But that live entertainment that you never really kind of saw coming, really, I think, added to the story. So, and certainly, as long as we mentioned it, bring back the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes.
Hear, hear. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the Frontierland train station was just this little red, clapboard building. And when Splash Mountain came in, they had to redo it and build it up on the second floor. But that station was so quaint, and it fit so well into a little western town that I do miss that as well.
Yeah. And look, we talked about the Country Bear Jamboree just a few weeks ago, and thinking back to, remember how few attractions there really were. This was one of the big ones. I mean, this was an e-ticket attraction back when we were talking about how when you had to buy your ticket book for just a couple of dollars. Your ticket book was like $3.75, I think it was, opening day. That was one of the big rides. That was one of the big attractions in Walt Disney World.
Yeah, it was huge, and I mean, and well deserved, especially for given the time. But even today, it's still we talked about it. It's still one of those must do kind of things for both of us.
So moving our way down into Liberty Square. Again, the attractions that were there, for the most part, other than the Diamond Horseshoe, what it was at the time was a real live sort of traveling vaudevillian medicine show with dancers, but you would make your reservations on Main Street. That's really what I miss. But again, because the attractions are there, like Hall of Presidents and the Riverboat and the Mansion, the keelboats weren't, but it's the shops. And I love taking people through and around Ye Olde Christmas Shop, because for me, that is one of the things that I do remember and I wish would come back, because that single shop was at one point divided into three. It was Johnny Tremaine's Silversmith, it was the Old World Antique Shop, and here's my holy grail of collectibles, Ryan P. Wilson from Main Street Gazette, was Mademoiselle Lafayette's Parfumerie. Because each of these shops were very unique. The silversmith sold colonial era reproductions of silver and pewter items. That antique store was a real antique store. You could go in and not only buy vintage jewelry, but you could buy, because again, with your potted plant for your mom, you want to bring her home a $10,000 armoire or dining room set. But there was an Imagineer that would go through, and the inventory was always changing. It wasn't there as a static sort of an attraction. You could go in a month later, and the inventory would be different. And I know because my parents had an antique business, so we went there a lot. They were always very curious about what was going to be in the old world antique shop. And I think that was almost more of an attraction than it was a shop.
I agree, because there was so much to see in there, and it was right. It was always something different every time you went in. And they had other shops like the Tri-Cornered Hat shop, but the perfumery was probably where my mother spent the majority of her time. It was either there or the Potpourri shop in the UK Pavilion in Epcot.
Right. The thing that was cool about the perfumery was that you could get off-the-shelf perfumes like, Gucci and Chanel or whatever it is. But the thing that was unique, and this is my holy grail, so if anybody has one, I would love to see it or, have it, was that they had a row behind one of the counters of different scents. So if your mom wanted to go in and get her own little custom scent made up of jasmine and lilac and bacon, she could go do it because everything's better with bacon. She could do it, and they would record her formula in a book. They would handwrite this formula in a book. So if you wanted to be son of the millennium and go back a couple of years later and get her custom perfume, they would look it up. Right. They would redo it and would put it in a custom bottle. And that's what I want. I want one of those custom Madame Lafayette's perfumery bottles.
I know. They're great. And they are. It's one of those things. It's such a unique experience that you miss out on today. There's not a whole lot of, there's a lot of build your own toys, but there's not a lot of build your own type things for adults, souvenirs for adults. If I'm bringing one thing back from Liberty Square, though, and this is my holy grail, it's the puzzle boxes from the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, dude, I have it right there. Look, I'm pointing to my shelf.
Oh, look, yeah. It's not going to be there next time I see you. But that was just it's one of those pieces I see every so often, and it's extraordinary. And you'd have to slide the panels in a certain order to open it up. And if you lost your instructions, you basically had a paperweight. But that would be the piece that I would bring back from Liberty Square.
Now, I am not a very tall man, Ryan Wilson, but I keep this on my top shelf, and I'm looking at it from here because my son is fascinated by this box, and he so wants to get his little 6-year-old hands on there. And, the sticker on the top is just starting to sort of, get a little dog-eared on the corners, and maybe it would not move as smoothly as it did 40 plus years ago. So that's going to stay right where it is, out of his reach and mine as well.
You know what? It's a good call that you're keeping it out of reach, but at least he has impeccable taste.
That's right, because I raise my kids right. So
that's right. That's it.
But if we move over to Fantasyland, I think there's actually this is one of the lands, especially now with the opening of this expansion, this doubling of Fantasyland. This is one of the lands that really has changed, and I think we've lost a lot from opening day in attractions, in shops, in food, in entertainment, in sort of all 4 corners of the square in Fantasyland. I think there's things that we've lost and would love to bring back.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we still have the tournament tents. There's still a little bit, of a cohesive theme, but the landscape and the visuals and the attractions has totally changed.
Yeah, and let's sort of take it bit by bit, and let's start with the things that most people think about when they think about going through Fantasyland, which are the attractions. Right. So we still have some of the hallmark attractions. You've got the carousel, you've got Small World and Peter Pan's Flight, but almost everything else has changed or been lost from day one. The Mad Tea Party is still there, but think back, 1971, the defining difference between that tea party and this tea party was that it had no roof. So I don't miss that because the heat and the humidity and the spinning after lunch, it's as bad of a combination as real pellets and rifles in Frontierland.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, for those of you who know Disneyland, they don't really have a canopy over theirs, and we didn't either to begin with. And now I think it's a much we'll say comfortable experience, if spinning can be comfortable in any way, with the roof on it. And then you have right across the way, which, you know, it wasn't an opening day attraction, but it was there very shortly after, in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea,
Right.
which we both lament on, I think it's semi-daily basis.
Right. And everything else that was their opening day is gone, right? Especially now as to when we're recording this. So where Mickey's PhilharMagic is, the Mickey Mouse Revue, this audio animatronic e-ticket attraction led by Maestro Mickey with all these little vignettes of classic and some secondary Disney characters singing a wide variety of classic songs. It went to Tokyo. We were hoping we would get it back when it closed. We did not. Dumbo is gone, right? Dumbo's moved. He's now doubled in size. Like me, in the past 40 years, we've both doubled in size and moved over to Storybook Circus. Clearly, for many people, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which was a B ticket, I think they could bump it to a D ticket at this point from the nostalgia point alone. A lot of people, that's their big loss. That's the thing that they would bring back.
Yes, and then you're right around the corner. We've just recently lost Snow White's Adventures, which is what it was known in '71, and now Snow White's Scary Adventures. Down by Peter Pan, the Skyway, we had the station in Fantasyland, and it's, you know, gone the way of 20,000 Leagues and Mr. Toad and Horizons and all of those.
And I will tell you, believe it or not, the Skyway is one of the attractions that I miss the most. As odd as that sounds, it was slow moving, slow loading, a little scary for those who did not like the heights. Certainly was not ADA compliant or accessible. But what it gave you was a literal bird's eye view of Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. Because what made this old style cable car attraction unique was that 90-degree angle. So as you passed over 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and came over by the Grand Prix Raceway, and boy, I feel bad for this poor cast member who had to stand on the tower, literally grab your cage and pull you and swing you around so you could make that turn. But as you look down into the lagoon, and Ryan, it never clicked for me because I totally bought into the fact that my 20,000 League submarine went underwater and we were going to Volcania. I didn't know it was bubbles next to the window. I didn't connect that as I looked down. Wait a minute, those subs aren't actually going underwater. But it was it gave, and look, I think we would all love to sort of be able to fly over Fantasyland right now, especially in this point. Mm-hmm. But for me, the Skyway and 20,000 Leagues, because of that that belief that I had as I climbed into that submarine and they closed that hatch above you and you looked out into it was a group attraction, but it was so personal and singular to you because you put your head in that porthole and it was just you and Captain Nemo. That's a really bad James Mason. And even
that wasn't
really
bad.
Pete
that was
Renaday.
not a bad James Mason.
But it was really Pete Renaday, so it doesn't even matter. But he was doing James Mason. But man, I bought into it. And it was a long attraction. And you went past the mermaids and the squid and the volcano and it got dark through the mountain. It was awesome. That for me, maybe the one that I would bring back even over. I know it's blasphemous, but I may even say to bring back 20,000 Leagues over Mr. Toad.
You know, it's funny. I asked my wife, but when I was getting ready to do this, I was like, "What would you bring back?" And she came to this much later than we did. But for her, it was the Skyway, and I think, you know, part of that is that bird's eye view. And you hit it on the head when you said you didn't realize that the subs weren't going underwater, even from that vantage point. You had the show buildings for everything. You saw the rooftops of Fantasyland. You saw the big warehouses, and it didn't matter. You saw flying elephants. You saw spinning teacups. You saw submarine, you know, the Nautilus going into the cave. It was priceless. But if I'm bringing one back, I'm right with you. It's 20,000 Leagues. You know, and as I get older, I appreciate it more and more, and I lament it more and more. But it was very personal, and it had so many real, you know, great little gags in it, and it had so much drama to it. And you felt like you were in the clutches of a giant squid, and so help you, Nemo was going to have to get you out of it.
Yeah, and because of how unique those ride vehicles were, they were massive. I mean, they were massive ride vehicles. And that experience began as you were entering the queue, and the way the cast members were dressed with their sort of little sailor hats and their blue uniforms and things like that. I truly, truly love it. Looking up at my shelf, I see no less than 1, 2, 3 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea sub miniatures. Of course, there's also 2 Mr. Toad cars up there as well too.
But and our Mr. Toad was different. We had 2 tracks. There were different places that you got to go. It wasn't like what Disneyland has, and it was unique. But my heart, and like I said, the more I get older, I've got to talk to some people who put that attraction together. And it's you look at the queue and all the ironwork and the steel work and the Volcania. It is just extraordinary.
And I'll tell you, one of my favorite and most prized collectibles, and this is actually going to not sound right, considering where it is right now, is I have a porthole from a 20,000 League submarine. I have a piece of Walt Disney World theme park ephemera. And so I got it, and I said, this is awesome. I'm going to hang it on my wall. I'm going to make a table out of it. I'm going to make this whole 20,000. And it's still sitting in my garage somewhere because I am not Tim the Toolman Taylor, and I don't know what to do with it. But for me, it's that sense of owning a piece of extinct history. And look, we talk about our sense of nostalgia, we as Walt Disney World guests and enthusiasts and fans and bloggers and podcasts, but the Imagineers, as we all are well know, are nostalgics too. That's why the Orange Bird is back. That's why some of these things have returned. That's why this retro merchandise has returned. Guys like Jason Grant and Casey Jones and all these guys from Imagineering and the design group, from the Vinylmations to the shirts to the Orange Bird himself, came back as a result of them. Even in places like Winnie the Pooh, we all know about the tributes to Mr. Toad. Inside the Winnie the Pooh treehouse, there is that tribute to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I love bringing people in to go and see, although I don't spend a lot of time inside the treehouse, so parents aren't going, hey, what's the creepy old guy doing in the treehouse with my kids? So I don't spend a lot of time there, but it's a neat thing to see because these guys are fans first too.
You're absolutely right. People like Richard Terpstra and Jason Grant especially, and there's so many, Alex Wright. But I can remember the first time I took a picture of the little, Nautilus put in a Winnie Pooh tree, and it was early in the morning, so there were no kids around, and I had to climb under into the tree, and my father's standing there going, I don't know this man, I don't know this man, I don't know this man. And I'm like,
I get a lot of weird looks in the parks, man. I get a lot of weird looks as I'm talking to myself recording or carrying the box around doing a live broadcast, but when I'm standing there with 4 other adults showing them a very nondescript carving out of the wood, I get funny looks. But moving over, because, again, there's a lot of things that were there opening day that are not there now. Let's go over to the stores and the shops, because all of them have changed. Tinkerbell's Toy Shop became Tinkerbell's Treasures. It's gone through a number of different machinations. It's still a sort of Castle Couture, but it was for years Tinkerbell's Toy Shop. But beyond that, Ryan, all of the shops have gone through changes. So where, for example, Sir Mickey's is, and I love Sir Mickey's, I love the story that it tells in there of Brave Little Tailor and Mickey and the Beanstalk, but that was at one point an Aristocats shop, and it was also Merlin's Magic Shop. So there was a second magic shop in Walt Disney World, and this one, if you're looking at Sir Mickey's, Merlin's was on the side closest to where the carousel is, and on the right-hand side would have been the Aristocats shop.
And this is where we go back to having those, these great Imagineers who really respect and understand the history. Where Merlin's Magic Shop is now, there's a window when you're playing Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom that has, Merlin's workshop in there. And so they've kind of brought a piece of that back. But you did, you had the Castle Camera Shop and the Mad Hatter, and all these stores have gone through totally different incarnations.
And one of the ones that, again, look, 1971, it was a different time, right? It was a different time. Our interests, the things that we wanted to see, the things we wanted to do, the things we wanted to bring home, I think to a certain degree were different. And so if you're looking at Peter Pan's flight as you're walking towards, as we record this because this landscape is changing, as you're walking towards Liberty Square, and on the right-hand side would have been the Skyway. And look, I love that Skyway area. I love the grotto. There's something about the water and the waterfalls and that flowing water. I think it should have been made into a Swiss chocolate shop, not a restroom, but that's okay. But where the restrooms are on the Peter Pan's flight side, where the extended queue currently is, that at one point was an art shop. It was called the Fantasyland Art Festival. They eventually moved it out by where Enchanted Grove was. But it was a place that you could buy pieces of art. And I don't mean sketches by Disney artists necessarily or prints of Disney cells. I mean art. You could go there, so you could go buy your potted plant, you could buy your silver and your bacon perfume and your antiques, and you could buy a real piece of art in this art festival. And there were artists there drawing and painting and doing silhouettes right there for you as well. Yes, it was art in progress. You could see people painting things, and you could come back a couple days later, they'd still be working on the same piece of art. And it had this live feel to it. You could see the art, and then there was finished products you could buy, and it was one of those other things that you could furnish your whole house just by making a trip through the Magic Kingdom. There you go. And look, we would be remiss if we did not mention at least one of the dining locations that we could bring back. King Stephen's Banquet Hall is there. It's Cinderella's Royal Table. Certainly we also like things like the King's Gallery that's inside the castle. But for me, if you're going by Peter Pan's Flight, obviously I hang around a lot there because it's one of my favorite attractions. Where the Fast Pass location is now, with the TikTok croc there, that was known as Welch's Troubadour Tavern. And the reason why I want to bring it back, Ryan P. Wilson, is completely selfish, because back at the time, they sold a variety of juice drinks. They sold grape juice, but it's not what you were drinking, it's what you were drinking it from. Because your grape juice came in a plastic bunch of grapes. Your orange juice came in an orange. Thank you guys for bringing that back over by the Citrus Swirl. Your apple juice came in a banana. But you get the point. You had all these little plastic fruits that you drank the juices from, and it's another one of my holy grails of collectibles because we all had them, right? We all, I can't now, I remember. But nobody saved them. 40 years later, and if you have one, I'm coming over. Most people didn't save those. No, I didn't say that. Unless there's one in a storage box somewhere, which is possible. I don't have one. But you're right. It was a Welch's sponsored eatery, and later on you would get the same kind of fruit cup kind of things over at the Enchanted Grove. But yeah, it was one of those things where you thought you were the bee's knees to get this fruit. You're like, haha, I'm having apple juice out of a grape. Right. So would 20,000 Leagues be the thing that you would bring back? Would it be the Troubadour Tavern? Would it be something else? Would it be the Skyway? Oh no, it's 20,000 Leagues that has to come back, and especially if you can bring the Briny Boys, the band that would play there with it. Yeah, I agree, and I know that the tough thing about this too, Ryan, is so much of this stuff is. We talk about it. We have the maps. We have the books. We've got the souvenir guides. We have our memories. But sometimes it's so hard to find photos of these things. Like I've never really seen inside Merlin's Magic Shop other than in my mind's eye. I don't remember a lot of these things other than what we talk about as experiencing. So as we go along, if people have photos of some of these things, I would love for you to share those with us, or share them with me, or I can share them on the blog or on Twitter. You can email me, lou@wdwradio.com. I'll certainly attribute them to you. Would love to see some of those, if you have some of these from early or opening day Walt Disney World. So let's move over to Tomorrowland, okay? Because Tomorrowland has always struggled, Ryan Wilson. It's always struggled trying to portray tomorrow. All right, because we struggled with this in 2012. They struggled with it in 1971. So here, Ryan P. Wilson, is your trivia question of the day. Oh. On opening day, October 1st, 1971, that's not the question. On opening day, name me the attractions that were operational in Tomorrowland. I got this. Grand Prix Raceway and the Skyway. I love this. This is why I love you. And you're a good hugger. Yeah, man. So think about it. You're walking down from the hub, right? And so Tomorrowland, big land, a lot of entrances in and out of Tomorrowland, right? There's two from the hub, a lot of ways in there. Walking down that the widest entrance into any land is right there in Tomorrowland. Opening day, October 1st, 1971. Use your mind's eye and picture me this. You don't have any of that metal ornamentation, right? All that decorative elements on the top levels is not there. The big archway with the globe that says Tomorrowland, not there. That rock work, that sort of Big Thunder Mountain colorish rock work, isn't there. There's two tall, giant, very sort of sterile white spires welcoming you into Tomorrowland. On the left hand,
you had water coming out of them, and
originally it didn't. Opening
Oh,
day
you're right.
didn't-
No,
it had
you're
no water.
absolutely right.
So there's not right. So you're walking down. It's like, all right. You look to your left. Flight to the Moon doesn't open until later that year.
Mm-hmm.
On the right, America the Beautiful. They open December and November respectively. Right.
Yep.
The Wedway People Mover doesn't open until 75. Space Mountain doesn't open until technically it starts in December 74, but officially opens in 1975. All these things aren't there. And as you look down towards the end of Tomorrowland, there is no launching pad. There is no Astro Orbiter / Starjets. That doesn't come till 74. All you see is kind of nothing. So you walk into Tomorrowland, it's not very futuristic, and there's not a lot going on there.
No, the tomorrow looked pretty bleak back in '71. You could kind of see the contemporary, but there was no If You Had Wings. All these great things that people picture from those early years. Opening day, there wasn't a whole lot going on there.
There wasn't, right? So you got the two attractions that you mentioned, Grand Prix Raceway, which was not very futuristic. It wasn't the cars of the future. It wasn't this future technology. 40 years later, it's still, 40 years later, more than that, they're still kind of the original Autopia cars from 1955. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
These 7-mile-per-hour gas-guzzling little cars. Flight to the Moon doesn't open until December. That's not very futuristic because we went to the moon 2 years earlier.
Right.
America the Beautiful is sort of a picture postcard vignette tour of America.
Not very futuristic.
Right? If You Had Wings is a tour of the world. That doesn't come until the year after. So you've got the Skyway, this decades-old technology of cable cars. You've got the Grand Prix Raceway. You do have a launching pad, although it's located where Merchant of Venus is now.
Right.
And so there's a couple of shops, but not really a lot else going on. And then, of course, Tomorrowland Terrace, which is Cosmic Rays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you had some pop bands, rock bands playing in there for live music, but that was pretty much all you had.
So if you say, what do you bring back from opening day 1971 in Tomorrowland, you're like, I'm good.
See, this is where you save yourself from Fantasyland. You bring back 20,000 Leagues, then you bring back the Skyway in Tomorrowland, and it's a double whammy.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see a Skyway type attraction, and that building is there. The Skyway building is still there to the right of Tomorrowland. It's a restroom. Now they took off sort of that top level a number of years ago, but so you can't really say, hey, there's a lot I want to bring back from opening day 71 in Tomorrowland because there wasn't a lot there. Again, there was the 3 little stores, and that really was about it, and a couple of restaurants and the 2 attractions.
Yeah, and it's like you say, they've struggled for time immemorial to define Tomorrowland. By the time you build it, we've already passed it, and where do you go from there? They had Mission to the Moon, and that got changed to Mission to Mars. But what really changed? Yeah, tomorrow is a little too ambitious sometimes.
Yeah, and things don't really start changing there until 72, 73, really 74 when you start getting into Space Mountain coming, and then the Wedway People Mover. Who would have known how cool it would have been if the Explorers Club would have come to where the Tomorrowland Terrace in between Tomorrowland and Main Street is right now? Again, separate topic for another show. But as we sort of made our way through the Magic Kingdom, as we're looking back at some of those experiences or attractions or things that we wish were still in Walt Disney World, it's interesting because they're not necessarily all grounded in attractions. I think when we think of extinct Walt Disney World, some of the things that rise to people's minds are Horizons in Epcot, Mr. Toad, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But I'm hoping, and this is part of what it was fun to do about this segment, we think about some of the things that either were secondary attractions or other experiences, maybe not even on a map, maybe not even on a Times Guide per se, but things that you might remember, whether it's putting in some, probably weren't even quarters back then, putting in some quarters or pennies in the penny arcade, or wandering through some of the shops as you went through, or trying to remember where some of these things were as you went in your first couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it even extends just a little outside the boundaries of the park. The topiaries that used to populate everywhere. You had Dumbo, you had the giraffes, there were just these bush shrub topiaries everywhere that you don't see as much now, except for during Epcot's Flower and Garden Festival. That's a piece that I really miss, and the experiences of watching the magic tricks happen in front of your eyes and having 2 side streets on Main Street. There's just all these little corners that, as we went through this, some of them I hadn't even thought of ahead of time, and they just kind of, come back into your memory as you walk through.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. People say, "Oh, yeah, no, wait a minute. Wasn't there Center Street here? Wasn't what the original Harmony Barbershop here? Because I got my hair cut there." It's funny what resonates with people, and that's why I want to leave those who are listening with a question, or sort of a two-part question, because I'm a lawyer and I can't ask just one-part questions. I'm a recovering attorney. I take that back. What is it that you miss most from opening day in Walt Disney World? And if you didn't see it, what was something that maybe you never saw that you wish you had? Was it an attraction? Was it some of the entertainment? Was it some of the restaurants we spoke of? Maybe even some of the shops? I think there's something very intriguing about a tobacconist or a magic shop or Merlin's magic store or the perfume store in the parks that would be very intriguing to people who had never seen it before. What is it that you miss, or what is it that you wish you had seen that you never had?
Yeah, I'd love to see what people come up with that. For me, I think it's all those little details, like we talked about with the magic shop, like we talked about with the shooting arcade, the canoes, all these little pieces that just made the experience so much more. There was so much more depth at that, for me in those memories. Some of them probably, not as great as I remember them.
Right.
I don't know how much drinking out of a grape would would thrill me at this age.
Mike Fink, we hardly knew ye.
But I think it's those little pieces. But if I'm bringing just one thing back, it would definitely be 20,000 Leagues.
Great. Well, I want to hear from the listeners too. Please come by, leave your comments in this week's show notes. Visit WDWRadio.com, click on the podcast link, find this week's episode, and leave your comments there. I'd love to keep this conversation going. I know Ryan and I will both be commenting there as well to hear and sort of help you guys reminisce. And again, if you have pictures, whatever it may be, I'd love for you to share those with us as well too. I also want you guys to go see what Ryan is doing, because he's got some great vintage posts and information and maps and photos and everything else over at MainStreetGazette.com. That's MainStGazette.com. I'll link that over in the show notes as well. Ryan, you got to come back. We've got lots more to cover, especially with Epcot's 30th coming up this year. A lot of other ideas for taking some trips on the Wayback Machine, some DSIs, and we'll have to incorporate food in there as well, too.
Always. Absolutely. Anytime.
It's time for the Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I give you a chance to test your knowledge about Walt Disney World history or trivia, current or former attractions, for a chance to win a Disney prize package. Before we get to this week's question, let's go back to last week, review the question and the answer, and randomly select our winner. So last week, as you know, I was all excited about Cars and Cars Land and Disney California Adventure and Buena Vista Street. So I wanted to ask you a question specifically about Cars and Cars Land. And I said that Radiator Springs was replicated in exacting detail by Disney and Pixar over at Disney California Adventure Park. And with nearly 300,000 square feet of rock work, it is the largest domestic rock work they've done in any of the parks, and brings an entire mountain range out to Anaheim, California. And the peaks of those mountain ranges, just like in the Pixar film Cars, represents tail fins of automobiles from 1957 through 1962. And the simple question I asked was just to identify what make of car, not even the model, just what make of car was represented in that mountain range. And again, hundreds of you wrote in, and all of you got correctly that those ranges from 57 to 62 was the Cadillac mountain range in Ornament Valley. Now, I also asked you a bonus question because my favorite character from Cars is Luigi. And all of the cars in Cars and Cars 2 are based on real automobiles. So the King is a Superbird, and the Sheriff is a Mercury Club Coupe. Sally is a Porsche Carrera. And so I asked you for a bonus prize, what kind of car was Luigi based on? And he was actually a 1959 Fiat 500. Again, all of you who answered got that one correct as well. And the prize package this week not only included all of my audio tour downloads, but a special Cars Land prize package. I was able to bring back some things from the media preview of Cars, including a limited edition triptych, like the old AAA triptychs, a map from June 14th, the day that Disney California Adventure Park was closed to the public, but they allowed in some media and guests, also an opening day guide map, and a Luigi's Festival of Flying Tires brochure that has games and puzzles from that opening day. Now, if you got the bonus question right, I also threw in a Disney California Adventure backpack as well. And so this week, I once again randomly selected one entry from all the correct entries, and this week's winner, who also, by the way, got the bonus question, is Jennifer Townsend. So Jennifer, congratulations. Email me your address, and I'll get your prize package and your downloads out to you right away. If you didn't win last week, that's okay, because here is this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week. And so this week, as long as we're going back in time with our sort of Wayback Machine, I thought we would take a look back at one of my favorite classic attractions that actually didn't appear on opening day with the Magic Kingdom, but a day later on October 2nd, 1971. Now, the Liberty Square Riverboat is now known as the Liberty Belle, but when the attraction opened, she was known by another name. So tell me, what was the name of the riverboat in Liberty Square that plied the rivers of America? Now, I know the current Liberty Belle is not the boat that was actually used on October 2nd. This is a second one that was built, so I just want the name of the Liberty Square riverboat when it opened in 1971. And this week's prize includes not only all 6 of my audio tours on digital download, but a mystery Vinylmation as well. You can email your answers to contest@wdwradio.com. You have until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, July 11th to get your answers in. Again, we'll randomly select one winner from all the correct entries for the prize package. So good luck and have fun. That's all the time we have for this week's show. Thanks again for taking the time and tuning in this and every week. Be sure and come by the website at WDWRadio.com. There you can leave your comments, talk about some of your favorite extinct attractions in Walt Disney World in this week's show notes. While you're there, be sure and check out our multiple daily blog posts, our discussion forums, new videos being posted every week, and lots more. Also, be sure and tune in every Wednesday night starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for WDW Radio Live. It's a live video broadcast and chat, usually right from Walt Disney World, where you get a chance to be part of the conversation and the broadcast and talk about this week's Walt Disney World news. You can visit the site over at WDWRadioLive.com or just click on the live button right on the homepage of WDWRadio.com. If you can't make it live, I'll post the audio in iTunes and post the video on the blog as well. I also love hearing directly from you, so you can email me at lou@wdwradio.com. If you have a question you want me to answer on the show, or call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-9391. And while I love hearing back from you, there's nothing better than a chance for all of us to get together right in Walt Disney World, because really nothing beats a handshake and a hug. So the next WDW Radio Meet of the Month in Walt Disney World is going to be this Saturday, June 30th. It's going to be the Sunshine Seasons Food Fair at Epcot Center downstairs in the Land Pavilion. It's going to start at 10:30 a.m., run till about 12:30, 1 o'clock or so. Come on, bring the whole family. Anyone and everyone is welcome. There's food and it's air conditioned. For more information, you can visit the events page over at WDWRadio.com or click on the events page on Facebook if you want to RSVP, although not required as well. Speaking of events, don't forget too, our WDW Radio inaugural e-ticket event, an evening at the American Adventurers Club. Tickets are on sale now. That is Friday, September 28th, 2012. We're renting out the entire American Adventure Pavilion for a dinner and show unlike anything you've ever seen before. If you never saw the Adventurers Club, or if you missed the Adventurers Club, this is going to be something really, really special. And it's a great way to kick off an amazing weekend because it's the start of Food and Wine Festival. There's a Tower of Terror race on Saturday. D23 is having their Epcot 30th anniversary on Sunday. And of course, Monday, October 1st, is Epcot Center's 30th anniversary. So it's really a great way to kick off what's going to be a fun, fun weekend. For more information, again, visit the events page over at WDWRadio.com. Quick thanks to my partners and sponsors, Mouse Fan Travel. They're my recommended travel provider because it's who I use. I'm going out to D23's Destination D this summer using Mouse Fan Travel. You can come out as well too. And whether you're coming to Walt Disney World on a Disney Cruise Line vacation or Adventures by Disney, Becky and her team have the best prices, all available discounts, all at no additional cost to you. Visit them over at mousefantravel.com and visit WDWRadioCruise.com if you're interested in coming with us November 4th through the 8th with Richard M. Sherman of the Sherman Brothers on the Disney Dream. Really, really excited for that. Also, when you're coming to Walt Disney World, maybe you want something a little bit bigger. You got the extended family in town? Look into an all-star vacation home at allstarvacationhomes.com. They have their own pools, spas, kitchens, multiple master bedrooms, game rooms, room for the entire family. And if you want to stay right in the heart of Walt Disney World, the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin has not only the incredibly heavenly beds, the luxurious Mandara Spa, but more importantly, 17 world-class restaurants, some of which are my very favorites in the world, like Blue Zoo, Shula's, and Il Molino. Visit them at swananddolphin.com. And if you're missing Disney, you want to get a little bit of Disney magic delivered to you right at home or on your iPhone or iPad, Celebrations Magazine, you can visit them over at celebrationspress.com. You can subscribe, order back issues, and find out how you can get the digital download as well. And as always, my friends, most importantly, you are my friends, whether we have met yet or not. All I ask is that if you like the show, please help spread the word. Let others know about it. Tweet out that you're listening. Share links on Facebook or Pinterest or Google Plus or in your favorite discussion forums. And please come by, rate and review the show over in iTunes. Very much appreciated as well. And finally, it's time for you to start taking a chance on doing something that you love each and every day. Believe in yourself, and just in time for the release of the film, get out there and be brave. Be positive. Have a great week, everybody. And remember, always keep moving forward. So until next time, see ya.
Hey Lou, this is Billy Latta calling from Metuchen, New Jersey. It's been just over a week since we had the WDW radio meetup in New York City, which was phenomenal. I had a great time there. It was great to actually introduce myself and meet you in person while we were there. I had a great time interacting with all the other people that are usually inside the box. And it was the greatest part about it was actually getting to meet these people and realize, that there's a much bigger Disney family who has this passion and this excitement about the parks and about just everything that Disney is. Other exciting news that's going on is it is currently June 18th, and I leave in exactly 2 months to pack my car up and drive down to Walt Disney World to live there for the next 4 months. So I'm extremely stoked about that, and hopefully when I'm down there, we could get together and we can get a Dole Whip or a Mickey bar when I'm down there, and hopefully I'll get the chance to do some more Walt Disney World meetups. Hope everything's going well. Take care, Lou, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Hey, Lou. This is Matt. I'm calling from up in New York. I first just wanted to thank you for your podcast every week. It's definitely a pleasure to listen in every Monday and just hear everything that's going on at Disney World, and I especially love this last week's podcast on the ABC commissary, which I've been to a few times but never really fully appreciated until your full review of the place. I'm definitely looking forward to going there again on a future trip. I also just wanted to let you know that this week I had the opportunity to go and see an advanced screening of Disney Pixar's Brave, which comes out in theaters next Friday, June 22nd. It was definitely an exceptional movie, definitely up to the Disney Pixar standard, and just wanted to let everybody know that it's really a fantastic movie, and you should definitely look forward to going and seeing it next week. And if you're interested in learning more about Brave, I have written a full review on my Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/Steamboat Productions, then you can read a full review there. But definitely looking forward to more podcasts in the future, and thank you for all that you do. Take care.
Hey, Lou. This is the Thurston family from Huntsville, Alabama. We're actually enjoying a little lunch up here at the Katsura Grill, probably in the place that you like to sit. Great suggestion. It was a wonderful lunch, and nice and relaxing day here at Epcot. We've enjoyed all your suggestions. The family was listening to your show as we drove down from Huntsville, and my wife had never heard your show before, and she asked me, she said, "Does all Blue do? Is that all he does is eat?" I said, "Yes, that's what he talks about a lot." We sure do appreciate your show. We are avid listeners and love Disney. Have a magical day.
Hi, Lou. I love you, Lou.
You've got a friend.